Hi, everyone. I'm Larry Walsh, and this is Changing Channels, and we've got a great conversation for you today. Um, Channelnomics works with technology vendors around the world. We work with hardware, software, cloud, distributors. We work with everyone. And it's because our mission is to help define the best routes to market for vendors and how to best work with partners to reach the customer. The thing that all the vendors we work with have in common is that they're always looking for ways to optimize their partnerships, how to optimize their indirect routes to market so that they can get greater value to the entire chain, value for the customer in terms of the utilization and the return that they get on their investments, value for partners in the form of growth and partnerships, and of course, value back to them in the form of revenue. Now, the market is changing, the customer's needs are evolving, the roles of the partners are changing. And not every vendor sees the partners as necessarily a sales conduit. They see them as deliverers of value add services, enablement, support, management. The selling part of it is only a small portion and not necessarily the most valuable part. And so many companies are looking at how do they relieve partners of the sales burden and help allow them to go on and do the real valuable tasks that the customers needs. And one of those companies is Autodesk. Autodesk looked at its channel, looked at the role of the partners, and determined that the real value that the partners are delivering to customers is after the sale. So they've switched to an agency model in which the partners bring opportunities to them. Autodesk sells the licenses to the customer, and then the partner delivers all the post-sale value add and enablement services. This agency model, it's not unique, but it's also not one that's practiced to the extent that Autodesk is. It's kind of different than what many vendors are used to in terms of dealing with partnerships. So we invited Rachel Tuller, the Vice President of Global Channels at Autodesk, to come join us to talk about the Autodesk agency model, why they did it, how they implemented it, and what their expectations for it are. Again, I'm Larry Walsh. This is Changing Channels. Let's get into it. Rachel Tuller, welcome to Changing Channels.
Thanks, Larry. Happy to be here.
So you've been at Autodesk now for a little more than a year. For those who don't know Autodesk, why don't you just, give us a quick snapshot of what you do, what your company does, and what you do for it.
Sure. Well, I knew Autodesk back in the day when I started early career as the AutoCAD company. And as I was interviewing, I learned we are so much more than that. We actually have about 165 different products, and we're big in three main industries. What's really interesting about Autodesk being a 45-year-old company is we're very vertically focused. So we have the AEC, which is architecture, engineering, and construction industry. We have design and make, which is design and manufacturing. And we have media and entertainment. So all the Star Wars, Avatar movies like that, that's all of our software. So three very distinct vertical industries and really deep in each one of them, market leading.
I have a soft spot for CAD CAM applications. Something that I don't share with many people. Once upon a time, I wanted to be an engineer. And in 1985, I got to use CAD applications for the first time. A
Yeah.
lot different than they are today. I'll say
For
that.
sure, for sure. Now it's 3D. Now we put on virtual reality glasses and you can walk through a construction building and move light switches and change lighting and figure out the temperature of the building. Like it's phenomenal to me. I geek out over it all the time.
Yeah, I think back at it, you talking about everybody puts on the VR glasses. Back then, we all took turns using the one PC that was in the lab.
Yeah, right, right.
So but look, in the time you've been at Autodesk, you actually became a part of a process of really not just what other companies, other vendors do is just changing and optimizing the channel program or the partner program. You overhauled it. You actually changed the entire model to this agency model. Tell us a little bit about what before we get into this particulars, what is an agency model?
So an agency model is really just a financial transaction model. If we bring it down to the common denominator here, it's where our company has a direct billing relationship with the customer. So we still have partners, we still have distribution. We don't have distribution as much in the agency model, but we still have a lot of markets where we're two-tier. But we still have a lot of information where the customers will work directly with the partner. They will go through the POCs. They will, do the pre-sale cycle and everything. And when it comes down to the quote, the partner sends the quote out of our system, but it's on Autodesk paper. And we invoice, we bill, we collect, we do all of that. So think of like the newer car models like Tesla, and now Volvo's gone to this, and Volkswagen, where you go into the dealer, you do a test drive, you see what color you want, what features you want. But when it comes right down to it, you're ordering from the company directly. And that's really what an agent model is, kind of like AT&T, like the telcos, but for software.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about the benefits of this, because I understand what you mean by the partners are the ones selling, essentially selling your paper.
Right.
So they become it's not even a pass through anymore. It is a commission sales process. So even harkening back to when there were things like manufacturer reps, right?
Right.
What's the advantage for the partner if they're doing all the work on the front end that they used to do versus in not holding the paper versus you holding the paper?
Well, first of all, just the whole collections part of the business, right? They don't have to worry. Their accounting teams, the promise is that their accounting teams get less and less, that they don't have to worry about collecting. They're not fronting the bill. They're not going out for financing programs. They can actually just worry about their sales and pre-sales and post-sales activities and not all the administration that comes with it. So that's the number one benefit to partners, is not being able to do that. And second of all, having a great relationship. Our partners actually have a technical integration with our Salesforce. They are truly an extension of our sales team. So we both have access to client information, client data. They now have direct access as well, whereas they had it before. Now they can see all of the usage data and all of that as well. So we're exposing them to that as part of one of the benefits here. So all the data they're getting about their actual customer, they now have direct access to, because it's all part of the same system.
And they also still have the ability to do post-sale services for the customer, which is a part of the value add equation.
Right, right. And that's really what we're encouraging them to do. So these customers, the partners that are just transacting software, like, that is fine. We need that, right? It's all part of our business. But the ones that are developing IP, that are creating APIs, that are, creating technology and then delivering services, they're the ones that are really value add to our customers today.
So one of the reasons that Autodesk stated for the change wasn't, what you would expect to hear, which is, we don't actually deliver anything shrink wrapped anymore. I mean, in fact, I've shared with Rachel, as I'll share with everybody now, is that Channelnomics has worked with Autodesk in the past in terms of trying to define SaaS models and how to engage with partners that way. So to say that there's no more shrink wrap isn't necessarily the reason why you did this. One of the stated reasons is that you needed more data for the
Yeah.
customers. Talk a little bit about that. What is it that you were looking for?
Yeah. So, as AI becomes more prevalent, right, we want to be able to leverage AI in our business, whether it's to run the business or support our customers or help our customers with their businesses. And we didn't have that data. It sat with distribution, it sat with the partners. So we had very little visibility into why our customers were using what they were using, what they were doing with it. Were they adding, subtracting licenses, upgrading to collections? Like, we didn't have visibility to a lot of that. So now we can bring that data in-house. We can do all the analytics, run the Power BI against it, and really determine buying patterns, upsell patterns, cross-sell opportunities. So it's when we then feed that data back to the partners to say, hey, like customers have done XYZ, you should go run the sales play with that customer over there. And so being able to have that data is great. And then with our customers, helping them understand what their peers are doing with their data in their businesses is helpful as well. So it's really just all about the data and being able to leverage AI.
Okay, so I'm gonna be a little challenging on this because uh, it, there are a number of companies out there that deliver software as a service.
Mhm.
So the vendor is the one, like Autodesk is the one that's actually hosting the application. You're managing them, you're developing, adding new features, and you
Mhm.
can see the telemetry.
Yeah.
So what led Autodesk to the conclusion that it needed a different channel model to enrich its data further? And how did you settle in on this agency model? What was the decision-making process?
So first of all, that was before my time, but what I was told is that, we really, it's really taking that telemetry and taking it to the next level, right? Layering in purchase data and everything else. We want to be competitive in the market. We need to know what's going on from a price perspective. And it was the financial models that we really didn't have a lot of insight into. We didn't know what our SRP was. Right. And so now what we want to do is we've been able to set SRP in the market and hold that. We have volume pricing available. But what it means is that we are much more consistent from a margin perspective and from a profit perspective, and then we can actually pass that savings onto either the customer or the partner as we need to, and then be able to really drive um, value in the market with the data that we're providing back. So the value is no longer in our pricing and in our discounting. The value is the services, the post-sale implementation, the telemetry data, the usage data back to our customers. Part of this system that we put in place, it was twofold. One, changing the model, but also updating and modernizing our system. So moving to a modern ERP and now allows our customers to do a lot of self-service. So if they just want to add one AutoCAD, they can go into their account and just do that, right? And the partner gets credit for it. Or they can go, upgrade to a collection or, increase, decrease. But we didn't have that capability before with our old systems. So being able to modernize and change the model in the system at the same time created tremendous benefit for our customers.
I would imagine that this also results in a lot more certainty. I mean, one of the things that when we talk with partners is that particularly when they go through this dance, it always amuses me whenever I hear people like you, and I'm not pointing my finger at you specifically, but you talk about partner profitability, and you're going to give them this amount of discount, you're going to give them another few points for deal registration, and yada yada yada, and you call that profitability when all it really is discounting,
Right.
and every deal becomes different.
Yeah.
So I would imagine there's certainty that comes out of this process for the partners as well as the customers too. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that is the one thing that we heard loud and clear that the partners are saying is a benefit is they know what their sales price is, right? They're no longer having to give away the back end to get a deal, to close it, to either take it from another partner or, um, negotiate in the marketplace. So the good news is their margins have increased, and we'll kind of get to that in a minute as to what the partners are saying about the model.
Yeah, I was going to lead into that. Is that what exactly are you seeing so far in terms of the net benefits to Autodesk as well as the partners? What's the early results been so far?
So the early results are partners. First of all, there was a lot of skepticism, as I'm sure you can imagine, as we changed to this model, right? We've had some partners that have been with us since we started, so 40-year-old partners, and they're like most people, change is difficult and it was hard, and there was some naysayers even within the company. But as we move to this model, we're seeing the tide really shift, and the partners come back and say, I was wrong or you were right. And oh my gosh, my bottom line is improved and my profitability has gone up, and I can now predict quarter to quarter, when I look at my renewal base, what my sales are going to be. And it's not operationally perfect yet. There's still a lot of work to do, and we continue to have fixes in the system and everything else. But the reality is that from a bottom line perspective, the bottom line's the bottom line, and it's getting better.
Yeah. There's, when you talk about partner skepticism,
Mhm.
you and I have been doing this for a while. I'm going to, for those of us watching on YouTube, you can see that Rachel and I have been doing this for at least 5 years. Um, Kidding, of course. Uh, but I have never seen partners just leap on a new model or a new program. They're always skeptical about something, but this really is a radical change from the way that Autodesk was going to market with partners before. How did you counter that skepticism? What were the things that Autodesk did to at least get them to feel confident enough to try?
Yeah, there's three things. First of all, I don't think that if we had a very horizontal partner ecosystem that this would actually be possible. I think the fact that we had such a very deep, rich, long tenured ecosystem is really one of our cornerstones, right? That we're able to do this. Over the years, Autodesk has changed a lot. We went from perpetual licenses to subscription. We went from front end to back end. We've been doing these changes along the way. We knew 5 years ago that we were moving to agency. So the whole move from front end to back end was a first precursor to that. Then we did the system change, then we did the model change. And so the other thing that we did really well is we communicated early and often. Partner principals were aware of this a couple of years ago, several years ago, actually, that we were moving to this model so they could prepare their businesses, they could prepare their investors, they could prepare their boards for the shift in financial reporting and financial modeling and got them used to the idea. And then third, we did a lot of system work. So we have a program where we help them with the development. So we invested in their systems to be able to tie in and do the APIs and connect into our systems. And we had about 18 months of investment in the channel to really help them get their systems and toolings to a place where they needed to be.
One of the things I really admire about Autodesk, I always have, is that you're not just an application, you're a platform.
Yeah,
And you have a vibrant ISV community around you.
we do.
Is this allowing your ISVs to engage with you in a way that they couldn't before? Because I can imagine that before they were selling on top of you or selling around you, but now they actually can participate. Is that
Yeah.
part of the benefit as well?
It's really exciting. Yes. When I came in here, I thought I had to go build an ISV ecosystem. And really, we have thousands of developers around the world and companies that are leveraging our technology. And now we can actually build a really strong go-to-market with them. So that's something that we'll be launching later this year. So I'm super excited about that. But absolutely, they now have a way to be able to build on top, to not have to work. They don't, I mean, not, they don't really want to sell our software. They want to sell their software, right? And so that's the beauty of it is we can work on that together and then they can deliver, the business outcomes to the customers.
So what's changed otherwise? Has this changed the way that you're investing in partners, that you're enabling them and supporting them? Does it change the way that you help them with their marketing, or has that just, is that all still there, but just in a different form with this model?
Both, I think, is probably the answer. We started a few years ago in using the term solution providers, right? Instead of just resellers, instead of a channel, instead of, just a straight partner channel. We really wanted to change the mindset of our partners and help them see themselves as solution providers, right? And this is what's interesting about the industries that we're in is that they are just now going through the digital transformation. So it's very exciting to be in a community and in an industry that's just now embarking upon this, unlike healthcare or auto, that has moved to this area a long time ago. Our partners truly see themselves as solution providers. We're starting to see a bit of a bifurcation, right? There's been a lot of consolidation in the industry. So the big partners are getting bigger, and the smaller partners are more of our specialty partners, right? So they are dedicated to a specific industry or just a specific product, and they're going deep. So we've got kind of a scale and a depth chart that we use, which partners cover everything for us and which partners go really deep in a certain technology. And both are of value, right? And I think that's the one thing that we can really do now is speak to the value that our partners bring to our customer business.
Now, you mentioned that this is still somewhat of a work in progress. You didn't roll it out uniformly all at the same time. In fact, there's still some places where it's still being worked on, or at least it hasn't reached yet in the world.
Yeah.
What was the thinking behind that? If you've been preparing, Autodesk has been preparing for this for a long time. So why not? Why has the rollout not been uniform?
We knew that it was a pretty significant change, right? And we knew that we needed to get it right. And we knew that we had to start somewhere, right? If we waited to get it right, we'd probably still wait to be launching, right? So I think going small in a specific market. So we looked at all of our major markets. We started with Australia, small market, but still healthy for us, and a good mix of partners, some very verbal and vocal partners that have been with us for a long time, giving us the right feedback. And we launched there first, and we have just now in February gone through our very first renewal cycle in the new system. And I can say that our renewal rates are well, I can't talk percentages, but they're definitely healthier than they were before, which is good, which is the promise, right, that we had because we were able to self-service and let customers know that, get the renewal reminders out, in a uniform and consistent way. So that was good. Then we moved to the United States, which single currency, single language, it's a big market, a lot of volume, but there wasn't a ton of complexity. So then we thought, okay, let's use the volume card and let's go to the States and Canada. So we did that. That went well. We're just in June 16th, 17th, coming up on our first renewal season here. And then we did EMEA, our other major markets in the fall. And that was more complex, right? We have multiple languages, multiple currencies, lots of complexity. But by then, EMEA realized the benefit of a lot of the learnings that we had. And I think before we launched EMEA, we must have had like 170 or 175 fixes in the system to date that we learned from our learning since Australia. Little tweaks here, little tweaks there to make it much smoother. And then finally, we rolled Japan in November, which was the last of our major markets that we moved over. And again, different language, different character set, different currency, and we were able to get Japan through. So now we're in all of our major markets. Right now, there's no plan to go into our emerging markets. Those are typically 100% partner led. We're doing very well with our distribution partners there. So there's not really a plan to move into those markets yet. And we'd like to stabilize first and get through the renewal cycles this next year. So that's our timeline, and that's how we did it. And I think by doing that, we were able to build confidence and trust along the way. Partners talk to each other in different geos at our various events. How's it going? What are your lessons learned? And I think they all fed off of each other, and the fear level went down as we rolled throughout the world.
You mentioned that you're still using, even with the agency model, you're still working through distribution.
Yeah.
And distribution's role has typically been, I mean, distribution serves a number of functions, but a lot of it has to do with partner management, credit and finance, making sure that there's risk mitigation and fulfillment. In your model now, what's the role that distribution plays?
So distribution is still critical. In the United States, where we are mostly an agency, government is still in distribution model, right? Because of GSA, because of other things, because of all the billing and the rules and regulations. That's something that Autodesk has never brought in-house. We've always outsourced that to distribution, and it's a big chunk of our business. Same thing in some of the EMEA markets, right? We've still worked very closely with distribution over there, and then all of our emerging markets. We've just moved to a model in China and others where we're 100% partner. We are solely going through distribution, and they are managing our entire business now. And that's definitely a trend that we're seeing. Markets that, frankly, Autodesk doesn't want to set up entities in and things like that anymore. So distribution is taken over, and we are very excited about that.
So, like, been at this for, Autodesk has been at this for a while.
Mhm.
And as you said, it's still a bit of a work in progress. So, any surprises? I mean, did you get any unintended consequences from the changeover?
Yeah, I think there was a lot that our partners shielded us from that we didn't realize all the work that our partners do day in and day out when it comes to the operation and the billings and getting the quotes right, and is the address right, is the email right, like a lot of that. So there's been a lot of what's the right word? A lot of activity in that area. And then same thing with the customers. I think the customers didn't realize how much the partners did for them as well, which is fantastic because now they're like, we want to keep working with you. Yeah, fine. We'll pay the bill through Autodesk, but like you add tremendous value to my business. And so that's something that we're seeing has turned out to be a really positive thing. I think operationally, we're still sorting through some of the kinks and bumps and bruises that happens every time you put a new system into place, do a system change and a model change, you're going to have exponential tickets, I guess is the right word, but we're working through them, and,
Yeah.
we'll get there. And our channel is incredibly patient, incredibly supportive, incredibly loyal. We thank all of them for the work that they've done so far because, we couldn't, I think it would be difficult for, like I said, more horizontal companies that didn't have the level of loyalty that we had to move through this as swiftly as we did and as, I'm not going to say pain-free, but definitely a lower level of angst.
So what's left to be done? Where do you see this going next?
So for us, it's really about the data, right? It's getting the data and the insights and getting that back out to the partner community and back out to the customers. So we're going through data cleansing, we're going through deduping, all that stuff on the back end to make sure that the promise of why we did this is actually coming to fruition. And we're seeing a lot of iterative improvements quarter after quarter. Once we have that data and we're able to really leverage it, I think then we're going to start to see the magic come in. And I'd love to come back and talk to you a year from now and say, okay, it worked, it didn't, here's what we've learned, and go from there.
Okay, well, since we can't wait a year or so to come back, let's ask the question differently for now.
Okay.
So, what if one of your peers came to you and said, "Look, we're seeing what you're doing. What advice would you give them in terms of replicating or exploring the agency model the way you have?"
Yeah, I think we have a lot of really positive things that we've done well, and I'd want to sit down with you and understand more about your ecosystem. I honestly don't think it's for everybody. I think it would be really hard in some cases where you're not a market leader or there's a lot of competition. Like if you're a cybersecurity company and there's 5 of you or 10 of you at the top competing for mindshare and the partners, probably not the right time to do this, right? But if you are in a market leading position and you've got a really strong, our channel isn't tens of thousands of partners either. It's a couple thousand, really strong partners around the world. So our scale isn't that big either. And I think, if you were doing this at scale with 30, 50, 100,000 partners, it might be tricky. But I still think it's something worth exploring, but I would definitely have some cautionary tales to talk through.
Very good. Rachel Tuller, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. This has been fantastic.
Always. Thanks, Larry. Appreciate it.
Well, that's about all the time we have for this edition of Changing Channels. I want to thank our guest, Rachel Tuller, for joining us again and telling us about everything that's going on at Autodesk. And I want to thank all of you for joining us again to hear about things that are going on in the channel. Channelnomics does what it does, our research, our enablement, our strategy work to make the channel a better place, a better medium for going to market for everyone. If you like what we're doing here, please hit like, hit subscribe, tell your friends, and also check out all the great content we have at Channelnomics. Until next time, I'm Larry Walsh.